For most of the last 100 years, the story of the Ozarks was people leaving. Young people left for the cities because the cities had the jobs. Families left when the farms could no longer support them. Towns shrank. Schools consolidated. The population of the deep Ozarks counties drifted downward decade after decade as the modern economy concentrated opportunity in places that were not the Missouri Hills. The Ozarks was a place people came from, not a place people went to. That has reversed, and the reversal is happening fast enough and quietly enough that most of the people who have lived in the Ozarks their entire lives are watching it with a growing unease they are not sure how to name. Something is pulling people to the Ozarks. Outsiders, buyers, retirees with savings the local economy cannot match. Remote workers carrying coastal salaries into a region where the cost of living was the entire point. Investors who have identified the Ozarks as undervalued and are acting on that assessment with capital the locals cannot compete against. The hills that people spent a century leaving are now the hills that people are racing to acquire, and the people who never left, the families who stayed through the hard decades, are discovering that being pulled toward is not necessarily better than being left behind. This is what is happening to the Ozarks right now, and the locals have specific reasons to be scared. Subscribe right now, hit the button and the bell. Start with the numbers, because the numbers are not subtle. The city of Ozark, Missouri, in Christian County, south of Springfield, grew 12% between the 2020 census and 2026, and is currently growing at nearly 2% per year. That is a rapid, sustained growth rate for a region that spent most of the 20th century losing population. The broader southwest Missouri Ozarks, Springfield, Nixa, Ozark, Republic, the Table Rock Lake area, has become one of the more consistently growing regions in the state, driven by exactly the forces that the locals are uneasy about. The median home sale price in Missouri rose 7.5% in a single year, reaching $258,000 in 2025. That number does not sound alarming until you understand what it means for a region whose entire economic identity was built on being affordable. The Ozarks attracted the people who are now arriving precisely because the cost of living was low. As those people arrive and bid up the price of housing, the affordability that drew them disappears for the people who were already there. A young Ozarker who grew up in Christian County and wants to buy a first home is now competing against retirees from higher-cost states who arrive with the proceeds from selling a house that was worth 3 or 4 times what an Ozarks house costs. At the Lake of the Ozarks, the pattern is even sharper. Sales of homes priced over $2 million jumped 46% in 2025. Waterfront home average prices climbed past $800,000. A $650 million redevelopment project is reshaping Osage Beach. First-time local buyers are increasingly pushed toward condos starting around $155,000, while the single-family homes their parents could afford on local wages climb out of reach. The lake that was created in 1931 by displacing a valley of working families is, almost a century later, displacing a new generation of working families through price rather than through floodwater. The mechanism changed. The luxury segment of the lake real estate market is booming because outside money has identified lakefront Ozarks property as a desirable asset, and the result is a lake region increasingly organized around people who can pay luxury prices rather than around the families who have worked and lived there for generations. Hit the like button. It tells the algorithm this story matters. The question worth asking is what is actually pulling these people to the Ozarks, because understanding the pull explains why the locals are right to be uneasy. The first force is affordability migration. Americans are leaving high-cost states in significant numbers. The data from moving companies shows sustained outbound migration from California, New Jersey, New York, and Illinois, with people seeking lower housing costs, more space, and a slower pace of life. The Ozarks offers all three at prices that, even after recent increases, remain far below what the departing residents are used to. A retiree selling a modest California house can arrive in the Ozarks with enough cash to buy a comparable home outright and have substantial money left over. That math is irresistible to the people doing it. It is also exactly the math that prices out the locals, because the local wages never had any relationship to California home values. The second force is remote work. The shift to remote and hybrid work that accelerated after 2020 untethered a significant portion of the professional workforce from the expensive metro areas where their employers are located. A software developer earning a Bay Area salary can now live anywhere with a reliable internet connection. The Ozarks, with its natural beauty, low cost of living, and improving broadband infrastructure, became a destination for exactly this kind of worker. The problem for the locals is that a remote worker earning a coastal salary in an Ozarks town is not competing on the local wage scale. They are importing an external income into a local economy, which inflates the cost of everything around them without raising the wages of the people who work locally. The third force is the deliberate investment thesis. Investment funds, real estate operations, and individual speculators have identified the Ozarks as an undervalued region with appreciating fundamentals: water, land, natural beauty, and a growing population. This is the force the channel has documented extensively. The farmland acquisition through shell companies, the timber rights enrollment in carbon credit programs, the lakefront luxury speculation, the data center developers eyeing the water. These actors are not moving to the Ozarks to live. They are acquiring the Ozarks as an asset. And asset acquisition by people who do not live in a place has a consistent effect on the people who do. It raises the cost of staying and reduces the community's control over its own future. The fourth force is the search for refuge. A specific segment of the people arriving in the Ozarks are coming because they perceive it as a safe place. Geographically isolated, politically aligned with their values, far from the urban problems they are fleeing, defensible in a way that appeals to people preparing for instability. The Ozarks has always attracted a certain number of people seeking to get away from the mainstream world. That number has grown. The off-grid and self-sufficiency movement has identified the Ozarks as ideal terrain, and the arrival of people seeking refuge changes the character of communities that were not organized around that purpose. Here is why the locals are scared, and why their fear is rational rather than reflexive. They have seen this pattern before. The Ozarks has been discovered, acquired, and reshaped by outside forces repeatedly across its history. The timber companies, the mining companies, the lake developers who drowned the valley, the tourism economy that built Branson on top of the hill communities. Every previous wave of outside interest followed the same arc. The outsiders identified something valuable. They acquired it. They reshaped the region around their interests. And the locals ended up with less control over the place their families had lived in for generations than they had before the outsiders arrived. The current wave is different in one important respect. The previous waves extracted a specific resource: timber, lead, hydroelectric power, tourist dollars. The current wave is acquiring the place itself, the land, the water, the homes, the lakefront, the character of the towns. When the resource being extracted is the region itself, its affordability, its space, its community, its way of life. There is no version of the extraction that leaves the locals better off. They cannot sell their way of life back to themselves at the inflated prices the outsiders have established. A young person who grew up in the Ozarks now faces a specific calculation that their parents did not face. The homes cost more than local wages can support. The waterfront is increasingly owned by people from somewhere else. The farmland is being acquired by entities they cannot identify. The character of the towns is shifting toward the preferences of the arriving population. And the affordability that was the one consistent advantage of living in the Ozarks, the thing that made staying possible even when the jobs were scarce, is disappearing as the people drawn by that Affordability bid it away. The locals are scared because they understand correctly that being discovered is not the same as being saved. The Ozarks spent a century as a place people left. It is now a place people are racing toward. And the people who never left are learning that the arrival of outside money and outside people, however much it raises property values on paper, does not give them more control over their home. It gives them less. Something is pulling people to the Ozarks. The pull is real, the numbers confirm it, and the forces driving it are not going to reverse. The question the locals are asking, the question that has them scared, is whether there will be a place for them in the Ozarks that the outsiders are building, or whether they will become the displaced population in the next chapter of a story their region has lived through too many times to mistake for good news. There is a specific cruelty in the timing that the locals feel even when they cannot articulate it precisely. For decades, the people who stayed in the Ozarks were told, implicitly and sometimes explicitly, that they had made the wrong choice, that the smart money and the ambitious people left for the cities, that staying in the hills meant accepting less opportunity, less income, less of everything the modern economy rewarded. The people who stayed did so anyway, because the Ozarks was home, because the land meant something, because the community and the pace and the connection to a specific place were worth more to them than the things the cities offered. Now the same regions those people were told to leave are being treated as discoveries by the people arriving. The natural beauty the locals were told had no economic value is now a selling point in real estate listings. The slower pace they were told to escape is now marketed as a lifestyle amenity. The affordability that was framed as a consolation prize for staying is now the thing being bid away by people who can afford to pay more. The locals are watching their choices get validated and punished at the same time. The place they were right to value is being taken from them precisely because other people have finally recognized what they valued about it. That is the emotional core of why the locals are scared. It is not simply economics, though the economics are real and painful. It is the experience of having your home recognized as valuable only at the moment that recognition begins to price you out of it. The Ozarks is being discovered. The people who never needed to discover it because they already knew what it was are the ones with the most to lose from everyone else finding out. Subscribe if you haven't. Hit the bell. Drop a comment. Are you watching this happen where you live? Because the Ozarks is not the only place in rural America being pulled at by forces the locals did not invite and cannot outbid. Thank you for watching. The truth doesn't shout. It waits for you to look closer.